Good afternoon, all. We welcome you to the next discussion, Actionable Intelligence and Cybersecurity. And for this, we would like to invite our moderator, Durga Dubey, Senior VP and CXO of Reliance. And our panelist, M. Sheshadri, NSC. Shrikant Chitole, Country Head at FireEye. Alan White from Dark Matter. Thank you. Rahul Sasi, CTO, CloudSec and founder. And he is also an Nullcon alumni.
So good afternoon, friends. I don't think I can expect a better panelist here. Excellent panelist. I just want to give a one-liner introduction to all of you. Sheshadri, I know you know that he heads the security, the CISO for the largest stock exchange of this country. Rahul is CTO for the CloudSec, but Rahul is more known for a different region that you all have heard about his horror story yesterday. So 15 years before he did that, I can imagine what is his age and what would be he in 15 years before. So Shrikant is an old veteran in the industry, and he heads the Mandiant and the FireEye. So for the India and SAARC countries.
SAARC without Pakistan.
Without Pakistan, of course. He told me.
Just clarify that.
So for me, it is taking a thread further because this is my third panel I am moderating where Shrikant is there and we are discussing about intelligence. So then Alan, you all know about Dark Matter. I have a very personal respect for that company. Been doing excellent job. And Alan heads the red team, blue team, and the lab. And his book on blue team field manual is very interesting. So all of you can look at that. See, I don't want to spend more time on this. I thought that we would like to make it a little more interesting because Nullcon panels should be in a different format. It should not be something that we should only talk. So all of us should discuss. With something about intelligence. So if you look at to me, I perceive that the theme of the Nullcon is intelligence. See, what's happening is, so everywhere you see that the people who were the so-called hackers 10, 15 years before, they have turned themselves to ethical hacker, and from the ethical hacker to security researcher, and today they are all security intelligence providers. So intelligence, and this was the need of the business, and this was needed, pretty much needed. All of us need intelligence, and without intelligence, we cannot be effective. We cannot be efficient. So effective or not, I'm choosing not to use that word because sometimes intelligence can be used for non-effective purposes also. So couple of things like for adversary management, intelligence is very important. Know your adversary. Intelligence is very important. And this awareness has come to the industry. Like all of us know that all of us are talking about intelligence. And so many, you can look at the exhibits, you will find so many intelligence providers, they are exhibiting their intelligence. They're exhibiting their intelligence offerings. So who should be the intelligence provider? Who all are there in the space? Our traditional security partners like Mandiant and FireEye, who have naturally a lot of information to give intelligence, to change that into intelligence. And then again this endpoint providers like semantics of the world and the McAfee's of the world, the EDRs, the consulting companies, the pure play companies like Rahul. So all these people are there now giving us intelligence. For us, I personally feel and passionately feel action is the measure for intelligence. if this intelligence is not actionable, we don't consider that as an intelligence. So we would be only discussing how to make this intelligence more actionable. So all of us will get benefit out of that. So the discussion will be around a couple of things. So the intelligence has been there in the field for a long time. So I would like to know from the people over here, some of the success story, which may look like a horror story also, how did they use intelligence to prevent a serious attack? Couple of success story if they have in mind. Then we'll discuss about from an organizational perspective, from the perspective of me and Seshadri, how do you make really this intelligence more actionable for us, integrate with our existing SIM, and can we have a threat intelligence standard instead of just giving intelligence? Can we have some kind of a standard so that my integration becomes easier? Then we'll discuss something about the ethical issues in cyber intelligence. How do you really believe a person who is giving me intelligence? All through, we are only believing the law enforcement agencies for giving us intelligence. Now we have to believe some other people who should give us the intelligence. And how to believe the actors? The actors are known in a very, very different name. BMW, CBR, BXT, these are the actors. How do you really believe the actors? Should you really talk to the actors or not? What is the role of middleman in those when you interact with the actors? And how to really prevent the unethical use of the intelligence? Like, I don't want to name anybody. I will try my best not to name anything. But if I name, I am responsible for that. I am only responsible for that if I name some company. I make it a disclaimer here. So there are agencies who come and pitch us, telling that not only pitch us, they actually start pitching from the top. They give a mail to our top telling that Reliance or any company's score is this. They do some kind of a scoring. For me, it looks very unethical. If somebody publishes my credit score outside without my knowledge or without my consent, I feel this is a criminal act. So what prevents this intelligence provider to provide our score to others? Anyway, anybody can do that. Any intelligence provider can do that. The thing is that they should have that in their business model or not. Is there anything in the system which can regulate those things? I don't want to say so many things on this. Ultimately, how do you make this intelligence meaningful so that we will be able to take action to prevent, detect, and respond to a cyber attack? This is our need. So my first question, the success story, I will not ask the success story to Srikant because yesterday night he told me a couple of success stories. So I would first ask Seshadri to tell me, I'm sure he must be using some kind of such a big stock exchange, and I'm sure he must be using some kind of an intelligence.
Seshadri, this session is getting recorded, okay?
So tell this audience, not only about you being in the industry for a long time, you can even tell that the kind of threat which has happened in the environment and the industry, the intelligence prevented it. Yeah, over to you, Cesar.
Okay, to start, good afternoon, and thank you for having me here. I'll try my best to answer these questions. It's a pretty long list. We at NSE, NSE is the largest stock exchange in the country, but we're also second largest in the world. Many people don't know that. We are very big. And even a 1 minute downtime of the exchange impacts the other exchanges across the world. So our threat perspectives are very of a different nature. And we're also critical infrastructure. The way we consume Intel, yes, it's necessity, and we've been consuming for the last 8 years now. So, and we have multiple sources of threat intel. Some are privately provided. Some come from the government because we are critical infrastructure. And some are comprehensive, some are okay types, some come early, some come late. In the end of the day, we have to consume it the way it protects us. Now, there are if I can say, three kinds of intel that we get from across all sources. One is preemptive. So there are service providers who say that, okay, NSE is being a target, it's been discussed in the dark web. There are people who say that financial industry is a target, discussed in the dark web. There are people who say that India as a country is a target, like it happened
So what do you do
last weekend.
So what do you do if you get an intelligence that the financial system is an attack?
Yeah.
What do you do after that?
So it is not just a one-liner that we get that the financial system is under attack. We also get a few indicators as certain IOCs, certain IPs, certain hashes. And as a corporate, as just a consumer, we are not government, right? So we don't go around fishing who it is, its validity, and what is the severity and all that. We just blindly block. It's the easy way to do, just blindly block. And there are hundreds a day, right? And what are you going to do with the attribution of those 100 alerts, or more than 100 sometimes? Like it happened last weekend when the entire India-Pakistan thing happened, there were hundreds of alerts, or much more than that. So we had to just go and block. So that is one kind, preemptive alerts that we get. Second kind of alert that we normally get is, okay, fine. Okay, when I say we, it's not just NSE, also our community such. Okay, so please don't confuse the two. The second kind of alert we get is that entity might have been breached, but there's been no impact, right? So they say, okay, there are some credentials available in the dark or somewhere in the marketplace, but for us, there's no direct impact because I have not seen a breach, right? So that is one kind of alert where, okay, we take precautions that these things don't get further led to a breach. And the last thing is, a breach has already happened. We were not aware. Somebody else told us. That's also an intel, or even press is intel sometimes. And there is been and it's already been exploited. Thankfully, for my good luck, it's not happened with NSE. So then you go into a recovery response kind of a measure. That's how we classify the three kinds of
okay,
sources.
I'll come back to you, Sisadri. You didn't tell me the success story. So, Alan, do you have any success story so that you have helped the community in the giving an intelligence and people prevented that attack to happen?
Test. Okay. So I think there's two things that we could bring up that are pretty impressive for this, talking about the field of threat intelligence. One, I think you've seen finally roles in organizations finally say, you're the threat intelligence person. Now, one's not enough. It sounds like you got a bunch more in your organization. But the fact that they're actually, now good evening, people. The fact that they're actually putting people in those roles, I think that's a success story because it means we're mature to past the point of just assuming it's something we don't do to actually actionable in the environment. The second part that I think is important is that a bulk of the threat intelligence feeds, right, are really somebody else's failures, right? You don't get a hash, an IOC because it was proactive. Somebody failed. So the success story is that if you can take those feeds and apply them quickly, now there's a lot of risk and challenge around high fidelity of those issues, who they really came from, blindly way, safer than not, right? So you just kind of apply them and see what happens. But, I think the community will sort itself, right? Because you're either going to be known to be a valid feed or you're going to be known to be a garbage feed. But I think the maturity in actually having the feeds is where we're at because, again, applying those IOCs at somebody else's expense, somebody who is likely a victim or potentially is going to be a victim, and now it's your chance to take advantage of that. So I think if you have a person and now you're applying them, I think you're already ahead in the field.
Oh, good. So Rahul,
Our success story is the exchange is still running.
Yeah. No, that's okay. I mean, but I was actually, thinking in a different way. I'm sure this is success story of your department, not success story of intelligence. So,
So we work in the field of open source intelligence, and I want to give you a very specific incident which we tackle. We work with Uber, GrabTaxi. GrabTaxi is the Uber of Singapore. Gojek is the Uber of Indonesia. We work with all these companies. One of the things we notice is, the drivers, right? These drivers install certain malicious applications. There are vendors who provide certain malicious applications. Once you install this driver malicious applications, it will spoof the GPS location of the driver. Mm-hmm. So when you book your Uber, your driver would not be showing up in the place Rather, he'll be sitting at his home, spoofing the GPS, and your your Uber application will show that the Uber is at your location. And then you can't, when you go out, you would not be able to see the driver and you cancel. And he gets $5. So this is a huge scam which happens in that region in this particular thing. And what we do is, there are vendors who provide these applications for a particular cost. And below where they post these, advertisements, the drivers will post their mobile numbers, saying that, this is my mobile number, WhatsApp me the link to the applications. So we take these feeds and provide it back to the companies we work with, and then they will be able to blacklist these drivers.
Oh, excellent.
This is
Excellent.
one very specific use case, which is actionable in nature, and then it's a great help for the consumers as well as the companies we work with.
Excellent, Rahul. So, Srikanth, briefly tell your success stories.
So I think I will not use a classical Intel as a story, but what's important is a victim Intel as a story. Okay, so that's a different ballgame altogether. So what we observed actually in last year in one of the power generation company, where we had installed actually one of our appliance from the network perspective just to detect what's going on, and we saw some callbacks. Then when we went ahead actually and did the check and balances in terms of from where the callbacks are happening, we saw it happened with their ERP server actually, which was communicating in a reverse and then transmitting information back to one of the server in China. So after then we got involved, Fire and Ambient folks and everybody, and then we figured out that it was a mask. Okay, the real gentleman actually was sitting in Israel and of course with the date stamp of a particular date in the year 2011, while we were doing actually this check and balance actually in the year 2018. Most important is this Israeli company was not actually interested in pulling down the power infrastructure of this particular company. They were actually interested because this came out actually as a victim intel outcome, is that we discovered that why they were sitting actually on the network since year 2011. The sole reason was this particular conglomerate, which was into power, had a subsidiary which was doing a business with the Indian defense. And this Israeli actually company was competition to this particular defense organization or the subsidiary of this particular power company. And what we figured out is that they were only spoofing actually and taking out the information about the bidding process. Okay, wherever these guys were bidding actually. So Indian defense, they're bidding. So all the defense projects, these guys were bidding. Entire information actually was captured by them, and they were actually then competitively placing themselves against them. So the whole issue at to proof point is that one, yes, you will go and discover that something is getting compromised. But what is more important is that what's the motive? Because that becomes the actionable intelligence for you.
Correct.
Now the question comes back is, with a lot of evidence, with the right evidence, everything actually with them, if they now want to go ahead and take a legal case and file a legal lawsuit against that company, they can do that. The question comes back is, are you really walking that full 360-degree for the intel, using the understanding the motive, and then going back to them? Otherwise, the story remains incomplete that, yes, you got something, you spotted something, but the whole issue is that what was the motive, and did you close the loop actually in terms of really going after them, stopping that particular stuff, and could you really move ahead? Otherwise, what's going to happen is that, and this becomes, of course, a benchmarking for the industry that, okay, if the motive is like this, we may pull you down. The other example which I can give is the APT36. Okay, now this is another APT group, and I love this because in the current situation, everybody will love this because APT36 is a Lapis group based out of Pakistan. Everybody knows that. And if you look at the report is close to about 120 odd pages plus. But what is important is that their whereabouts, their exactly legitimate websites, how do they operate, from where do they operate, the exact location. We have given it to the right folks from the Indian government perspective. The question is now whether we should pull down that particular infrastructure and shut them down. But here comes what we as a group, we feel that yes, as an Indian citizen, we should go and do something. The question is diplomacy plays a real role. Now the question is, if you pull this down, what happens? This group actually moves to some other country which does not have a bilateral treaty with India, correct? Now this is right now placed in Germany somewhere. The question is, yes, we have a bilateral treaty, so we know what's going on, what's happening. But if this group now moves, if we really go ahead, do something with Germany as an Indian government, they can pull it down. So the question is, every action will have some reaction. The question is, It has to be thought through very carefully. While there are successful examples, but the question is, how do you complete the loop and come out of what you really want to do?
So good. So more or less, there are attempt to make it actionable, and what I hear from the panelists is like they have success stories that they have prevented the attacks. Maybe they will come. They will at least for the providers who are providing in India, massively operating in India. They will prevent the attack like Cosmos Bank, which happened 1 year before. So the question is whether they had already given intelligence which was not acted upon by the people who are supposed to do certain actions. As Sisadri was telling that he immediately prevents. I am getting into a very, very complex thinking. Like, look at the providers. The providers are all my trusted service providers. Like who are our endpoint agents, endpoint service providers. They also give me some kind of an intelligence. They give us some kind of intelligence. So FireEye and a CloudSec kind of company, they also give us intelligence. And government also give us intelligence. If you have a regulator gives us intelligence. You have legal agency, they give us intelligence. I don't know, I may be exaggerating the thing, that sometimes 90% of those are common. More or less 90% are common. So how do you really, is it not a very difficult task that all this intelligence will come and you will integrate that to your systems, and whenever there is something happens, then intelligence people will always tell that we had already given you intelligence, we never acted upon that. How difficult is for an end user company like us to really implement those things? Even the IOCs are coming and implementing all these IOCs. Sometimes it may happen the system will not work if you implement those IOCs. You will miss the forest for the trees. So it is not that so easy. He may be having some way of doing it, but I feel that this is a very, very difficult, very, very challenging task. We not have the problem of that we don't have the data. We actually have the problem of abundance of data. We have so much of intelligence coming to us, both from the real providers, the professional providers, from the government, from the law enforcement agency, and also we ourselves get into some intelligence. Now, my question to Sisadri again, if you can tell really that how do you make it really more efficient in integrating that into your system seamlessly, and not only integrating and not missing anything which is provided by these people, and finally, definitely if you do that, you will be able to prevent, detect and respond to a cyber attack.
Okay, try my best again. Very difficult to consume that intelligence. Okay, I'll talk from ground level because we sit in the SOC. Your first point of contact for any intelligence service is your SOC engineer, SOC analyst, right? How many of you sit in a SOC? Anybody? Yeah, so right. So the first contact of a company for any intelligence is the SOC analyst. Now, how much does he know? He's an L1, L2 guy who's just out of college, 1-2 years, earns about 5-6 lakhs a year, and he has no clue what your company does. I mean, he knows a little bit, but he doesn't know the impact of that one news information or one IOC can cause in your environment. Now, depending upon that guy, to consume that intelligence is a stupid idea from a CISO's perspective. That's why I said it's extremely important. So what we have done is, as much as they provide intelligence, you have to have a competency internally to consume that, way beyond your SOC analyst group, or you can train them even better. But what we have done is we have built our own competency towards consuming this intelligence because the context is missing. Every intelligence is generic in nature. You have to have context to your organization to consume it and put it in the right place and not blanket everywhere. And obviously automation doesn't work. Don't even try automation. All the big fancy words of SOAR and next gen SOC and all is something I don't believe as in yet. Let's see. So yeah, it is very challenging, very expensive. again, short of people.
Maybe Rahul will give us a clue that how to make it more objective in really not getting into a heap of. Can you filter that at your end and give us what is really meaningful?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, being a vendor, should I be honest or should I just? So, okay, I'll be brutally honest.
Yeah.
See, if you look at the history of intelligence, right? In the olden days, kings used to tell their soldiers, foot soldiers, collect the information of anyone harming my organization. And what do the foot soldiers do? They collect as much of bits of information, brings it back to the minister in the form of bits and pieces. The bits and pieces will get formulated in the form of a report. And the minister basically tells the highlight of the report to the king, who basically says, okay, this is the action we need to take. But then that's how intelligence was. Intelligence was actionable. Now what has happened is with all the vendors like us, we need to sell our softwares, honestly, and to consume it. And there's a huge amount of data, right? And a huge amount of data. And we would not be even completely able to narrow down and make intelligence out of each of those data. We might be able to do the same format to a few set of those incidents, but we can't do it for the entire data. That's why the intelligence feeds are now provided. Mm-hmm. So that maybe out of that 100 feeds we provide, one, we can actually tell you a customized, a customized suggestion or a customized report. But with the growing data, we would never be able to tell you a solution for each and every feed that comes in. Fantastic. And that's the reason why this market is growing in the feed perspective, unlike the original, how the intelligence should have been.
So does ML has a role on it?
Yeah, so the role of ML is to actually, so 100 data comes to you. The role of ML is to say that out of this 100, this 10 is maybe what you should look at. Ignore the other 80. Oh. That's what ML can do, but still ML would never be able to give you the actionable intelligence here.
Fair enough. Yeah. Alan, your view on this? How do I really make best use of the intelligence which is coming to us?
Yeah, it's great. It's great problem. So, like you said, it's a tough problem. And I'll go back to my point earlier, which is having the people finally to sit down, and that's their job. It's SOC analyst is just a consumer of it, right? They're going to deal with the alerts as they come in. But the team that's responsible for how to take that their intelligence, apply it to the environment, that's the new role. Now, we all know that threat intelligence has a half-life, right? I mean, the speed at which you get it and the speed you apply it gives you the upper hand. That's the whole point, right? I want to learn from somebody else's mistakes so that I can not fall victim to the same thing and put those things in place as quickly as possible. And then but you're broadly talking about three categories, right? You have the very technical stuff, the hashes and the IP address, and you have the more tactical stuff, all the way up to operationals. Again, this evening is going to be brought to you by...
No, it happens whenever you speak, yeah.
That's right. We control the grid. It's the operational, right? So when you first get into the new role of your threat intelligence role in your organizations, and you have to be honest with yourself, how mature are we as an organization, no matter if we get the feeds from partner A, partner B, or partner C? If you can't consume them correctly, they're not worth it, right? So you have to understand the capability and maturity that you're at. For instance, right, many of you, I'm sure you send your friends a text message, hey, did you see this new USB-C Thunderbolt exploit on the Macs? Well, if you're a shop that's Windows, why did you spend half your day reading about that article? You just wasted time. You can no longer just browse your favorite threat sites to get the latest information. So again, it goes back to that maturity model. You have to do the basic ground pillars. What is the actual risk profile that I'm looking to defend? Is it my highest technologies, my perimeter technologies, that if there's actionable intelligence that comes against those technologies, that's the stuff I should spend only my time on the day on. If I actually have time to research and read more about the Mac stuff, great. But if I don't have a place to apply it, it's really useless. So I think it's really coming down to understanding the maturity you're at and be able to decide how much you can apply in your environment. Sometimes the tools will do it. So don't get me wrong. There are going to be some great developments on some SOAR technologies and some automation, and those will mature into the system. But when you're at the ground level and the entry level, I think you have to really say, how much of that intelligence I get can I actually action against the systems I'm in my environment, whether it's Microsoft, Cisco, whatever technologies you have. And then those are the alerts that you have to feed on to really shrink down how much that one threat analyst is now got the job of deciding that this is important. Is it exploitable? Is it defendable? Is it part of a larger campaign that we have to go make some operational defensive steps to block that campaign as well? I think that really is some of very tough problem, but steps you have to think about. Absolutely.
Yeah, second, I'll just little bit change the questions. Like sometimes providers like you who have been in the industry for a long time, not only provide information to the consumers, but also provide to their government and their regulators also. And the same regulator and government, the moment they get information from you, they also send the same information to the regulatory entities also. And for us, the most important is we may neglect you, but we can't neglect the regulators and government. So do you suggest us that we don't see if a regulator is giving us some information, we'll only implement regulators and government information, we don't not look at your information?
So I think Intel is Intel. It comes from providers like us, or it comes from the government or regulators. At the end of the day, it is your environment. It's your risk, correct?
That's correct. That's the problem.
And
We are always at the receiving end,
Absolutely.
and if something happens, people will tell that we have given you 100,000 IPs, you have missed one IP.
Yeah, so I think
And that IP created problem.
correct. So I think we are touching a couple of areas. So one is how do you consume? Second is what to consume, and third is going to be what's my prioritization. So these are three categories in which you got to prepare your entire SOC operations, considering from the Intel perspective. I think everybody has briefly touched, but I think what Sheshadri has also briefed is that how much I rely upon the SOC analyst and how much do I really bombard him. Correct. So at the end of the day, what matters is how are you consuming it, and that's the whole and sole reason we at least we insist very, very clearly to our clients is that yes, you may buy it, you may take it. The question is how are you going to consume it, and that's where we want to focus maximum time. So right from the onboarding all the way to the regular checks and balances in terms of how are you consuming it, that becomes very, very critical. And every now and then, I think we would love to have a check and balance in terms of whether it is going in the right direction. If you're going to change your security team as well, then in which case you have to come back and ensure that those again consume, and take that onboarding steps once again. So the question is, how do I take it from my risk perspective? Then comes actually prioritization piece of it. And third is, yes, in the priority, again, we discussed about two areas. One was prioritization. Second was, how do I automate or how do I not automate? But at the same time, how do I look at it very, very carefully? So the one is, so let me take the first one, which is basically, how do I take it? The question that comes back is, if it is just adversary led, okay, whether you are talking about the nation-sponsored attackers or you're talking about the financial criminal side of the attackers, that becomes one area of it. But is it really applicable for you? I can just vouch for it. For example, sometime back, we had come out with the ATM manufacturers, some intel actually on them in terms of their vulnerabilities. The question is, okay, it came out actually as part of the Wells Fargo or some other bank in US. But since there are only 3 or 4 ATM manufacturers in the globe, will it come actually and again, apply to my country? The answer is yes, because we use those 2 or 3 manufacturers. So is it becoming a top priority or not? Depends on how you take it. So that is one part of it. Now, second part of it, automation piece of it. So the automation piece of it, again, I think if at all I have to compare the industry, the last decade, which was 2001 till 2008, 2009, we could see mushrooming business of NOx. And from the 2008 onwards, we have seen the mushroom business of SOC. The question is, but the last 2 years or 1.5 years, I would say, it is moving in the direction of threat hunting. And that's where I think the focus will have to start going up and up, rather than looking at the device management, patch management, vulnerability management, those kind of areas. That is becoming L1, L2 kind of a mundane work, which should get shifted back to the NOC side. And start focusing actually on the threat hunting side, which will basically allow you to have right folks, getting them trained, retrained, get them actually ensuring that, they come under in the onboarding exercises, the check and balances, the regular education, the trainings. And then comes the automation and those kind of pieces, which will basically ensure that you move into the threat hunting space more and more. Number of service providers giving you intel is not important. What's important for you is that, are you able to dedupe the information using threat intel platform or those kind of things? That is a thought process, which eventually we will get into that direction. So I think the industry is moving in the right direction. On the consumption and the operation perspective, we'll make it more and more solid as we go along.
So understood. So Alan, directly to you, could understand the frustration of Sheshadri when he told that next generation of SOC and SOR security orchestration is not happening. In spite, I'm sure.
No, he's saying it's happening. He wants to see actually as per his.
No, we work together. I know I have also the same kind of a frustration. But the fact that is the need. I feel that that's the need. Because
Don't name him then. You should say yes. I also have that.
Yeah. So how do you really make? So one thing which Rahul told is absolutely very, very important from this perspective is that at the provider level, you should have some mechanism to use some kind of a technology to filter certain things and then give us certain things which is more or less actionable. Then of course there is something which you have to do yourself, what he told that you have to prioritize. Then that automation piece of it, which is like orchestrations. How do you really orchestrate? So what's your view on automating and doing an automatic orchestration so that not only that it integrates into our all SIM infrastructure, but it also kind of does an orchestrations and the incident management becomes more efficient.
Yeah, there's a few points in there that I could probably talk about. I think going back to the SOC concept, right? So organizations are still struggling with that trust factor, I think, at some level. I'll give you a perfect example of that. So take the concept of NAC, network access control. It's been around for 2000, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's been a long time. Hotels adopted it pretty quickly. They're like, hey, welcome to the hotel. I'm capturing you. You're on the network. But organizations still struggle with that. SOCs are a perfect example where why don't they do it? You see a lot more of that. Because if there's a threat intelligence rule that's triggered and you orchestrated it correctly, you could drop them right into a bad VLAN or a bad area and say, listen, I need to learn more about you. But it's that trust piece. So I think we're still struggling to take the advantage of the SOC concept to the next level, which is, hey, take the next step for me. Whether it's, some type of basic orchestration or even some, very sophisticated investigation through incident response. I think they're stopping at, just tell me what's wrong and I'll go look at it myself. So I think we have to overcome this trust piece from the service provider angle, not necessarily for your own SOCs. I mean, even inside, even inside an organization, the people who are responsible for the SOC at the same trust level, the people who own the desktop. And there's probably opportunity there that hasn't quite flushed itself all the way out. Yeah, for sure.
Good. So, Rahul, just one question to you. The kind of traction which is happening in the industry about a standard, threat intelligence standard, which a lot of your competitors also, they have started pitching that their solution caters to this standard. Yeah. So can you just give some light on that standard which is emerging?
Yeah, sure. Taxi, right?
Yeah,
sure. I mean, the whole idea about standardizing the thing is that intelligence, now that it's become a commodity, it has become a feed-based mechanism, and so many providers, and one provider itself would not be able to satisfy or capture the entire intelligence. They come up with a standard taxi, which is a centralized a particular protocol where every feed has to go in that particular standard, so that the conception of this would become standardized throughout the organizations. So for a vendor perspective, when we provide a feed, when I say intelligence, cyber intelligence in the form of feed, the feed will come in the taxi standard, which will have a couple of, is IP addresses, this is a domain, these are the vectors, etc., in that. And then they can consume this equally in all appliances, all, everything they have internally in a standard format. So that's what the taxi is all about. And yes, I believe, because since there's so many vendors out there which provides different sort of feeds, when they come into a particular standard, it might be easier for organizations to consume, as well as it'll be easier for vendors to provide that intelligence.
That's right. So what we'll do is, I've already spoken about the unethical issues which is happening, but what I would like to ask all of you is, when you started having this ethical hacking by individual, it was a very different ballgame altogether. Somebody starting a individual bug bounty, and somebody is just trying to hack. I met one of the hackers 15 years before. He's still in this conference, not here. And when he was a child, he was 13, 14 years old, and he attempted to do something to my website. And we discussed with him and all sort of things. This was very, very organized. Then the market evolution, what has happened is, now today, if you look at, this is a pretty much organized industry. I mean, there are companies like HackerOne and all sort of things. They have aggregated the hacker, and then pitching the bug bounty as a very, very organized offerings. So in the current circumstances, when the intelligence providers, so we have all the end users have a problem of really having a dilemma that whom should they trust to get this intelligence. So what do you think that, so do you have some kind of a aggregation of this intelligence provider and do same kind of scheme which this Uberization of your intelligence providers, or what's in your mind so that we get the best out of it? The fact that it is required, but sometimes we have a problem that we don't know whom to really trust to get this information. Sisadri, your view on this?
Blindly trust. The error of not trusting is a much higher price to pay than trusting and just letting go.
Okay, so fine. So he's that he has used blindly trust anybody who gives him some information. Very good, excellent. So
Quite simple, no?
So, I mean, like you said, right? I mean, one organization or one vendor would not be able to satisfy the entire need of intelligence. For instance, I give the example of Indonesia, right? If you don't have a presence in Indonesia and if you don't have a strong monitoring mechanism there, you would never be able to know what is happening on the ground. What is happening in Tamil Nadu? You know, I mean, with Geo coming up, right? With everyone having internet access, tons and tons of scammers are now online, figuring out different ways to make money or different ways to scam a customer. You need to have a much larger food presence actually to provide that. And one organization, none of us, one organization would be able to provide. It has to be a collaboration of everything.
Excellent.
And that's the only way forward.
That's excellent. So Alan, just tell me one thing, like who can provide us the better intelligence? Who has the more information about the environment? So who is that entity? Who could be that kind of entity?
The following name is, no, I think it's community driven. I think the vendors will go up and down on the trust of the fidelity, but I think it's the community that's going to vote it up or down, because it's that, you know, I click and liked it kind of approach, which is the more people can contribute to the fidelity of the trust of that list, the more quickly it's going to be adopted. But I think if it's always sold as an individual package, you know, it's going to let the community sort who's got the better feeds. I think it's a problem that only the community who consumes it will be able to vote on. I don't think it's going to be one dominant vendor over the other just because they're out there selling a feed and they got a good brand and a good commercial presence. I really think the community is going to vote it up or down. I mean, that's the adoption of all technology. The best technology wins, not the best brand. You know.
Also, it sounds maybe a little political, but let me ask these questions to you. See, like if there are pure play intelligence providers and they are doing very good, and they are also providing the same intelligence, you being in the space for a long time, and you have all situational awareness of, because you have more than say 100 million endpoints you have control. You know that these 100 million endpoints something is happening, because you have customers all over the world. So naturally you have an edge over others. Do you agree to this or not?
I mean, I partly agree, partly don't agree. The reason, because as he mentioned, you know, it depends on the end customer. For example, if somebody which is in Tamil Nadu and he needs to be protected, naturally, then somebody who has the best, you know, awareness about what's happening around, you know, he's the gentleman actually who may win. But it's not about winning or losing. It's about protecting. So the question is, as I said earlier also, you know, more and more intel you have, it's better for you. But at the end of the day, what happens is, you know, as Sheshadri mentioned, when you have more, you know, how do I dedupe? That's the whole and sole reason the threat intel platforms or the SIEM integration becomes critical. The prioritization becomes critical. But at the same time, you should also take a step back and say what your industry is into. If your industry is into the financial segment, naturally you'll have a different parameters. You may look at the criminal, the cybercrime, threat intel feeds. You may look at, you know, nation state sponsored attacker feed, you know, those who are specialized in that. Or you may look at actually, you know, somebody who understands the surface web intel much better, or somebody who understands social media better. I think those are the various angles in which you will try to consume as much as possible. That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, actually, even if you have a combination of all these put together, at the end of the day, the company, wherever they have invested into the research. Okay. But is research good enough? No, because
Absolutely.
you need also the analysts to ensure that the researchers You are collecting all that research part of it. You are ensuring that, it gets properly validated. The confidence level goes up high. And then third area comes in, which is engineering. Is engineering able to capture all this and, able to give it back into the format which is looking at sticks or taxi, whichever way it is, and are you able to prioritize that piece of it? So it's not just one function or one company.
No, understood.
3 clear-cut functions: research, analyst, engineering, working together to give that input. Second, more the merrier, better. Question comes, more the intel feeds, better for you because you have better visibility. At the end of the day, what we're discussing is actionable intelligence, but visibility is one area. With the action is the only way to go ahead.
So I think the last word from all these panelists about what do you think about this unsolicited intelligence given by people to you, or people by you to the intelligence about you to the industry?
Happens. Shit happens. You can't avoid it.
I'm particularly not for it. I'm against it.
Okay, excellent. So the unsolicited intelligence about you to others.
Unsolicited without commercials or with commercials?
Unsolicited, so no commercials. Unsolicited intelligence about you. I just tell that company A's intelligence score is bad and giving it to the world.
No, I don't do that because we don't like that.
You don't agree to this.
We don't agree because the reason is very simple. The intelligence world is so open, and see, we are fighting against someone who is rock solidly funded. We have to understand one thing. We have to be together. There's no way we can be independent of others and say, okay, no, we keep fighting among each other. No way. We have to fight a common enemy. There's no choice.
So Alan, your view?
Yeah, that's a great statement. So we're in the good fight together. That's for sure. I'm a believer in a couple things. I believe that the threat intelligence doesn't get better over time. So I'm not on the side of hoarding it, because it's empowers somebody or a small organization that says, I've got this information. So I'm more apt to lean on sharing. And I think, to your other problem or problem similar to that, there's exceptions, but by far, I'd rather make it harder and make the wall higher for any threat adversary to get to me. If that means calling them out earlier and flagging them in the threat intelligence feeds earlier, I think they have to then go reset up the whole campaign. So the cost of doing business just gets higher. Whether, again, they move politically in those kind of situations, that's a different situation. But I'm always a believer that I'm going to make your cost of hacking me or applying your attack onto me harder. And if that means I can share the threat intelligence as early as I understand it, I'm for that.
Oh, good. So I think I'm kind of done now with, I'm reserving my final comments. If audience has any questions, you can probably ask to the panelist. Yes.
So it's more of a thought or a question in my mind. It's not a direct question. So we have so many technologies implemented for protecting external threats. And the fact is the biggest threat is internal threats or the insider threats. Do you think this is the time where we should brainstorm about something called threat intel for insider threats?
Of course, the answer is yes, because at the end of the day, threat intel is threat intel. External intel doesn't matter. It might be internal, but in case if you go and decode it, perhaps, and if you do really apply the forensic piece of it, you might realize that internal journal might have been compromised, and then acting like an internal threat. But essentially it's an external threat. So you have to perhaps go and decode it. So at the end of the day, motive matters the most, and that will decide actually your next course of action. There's nothing else.
Any other questions?
Also, don't ask the complex question, okay?
No. So just a question for all of the panelists here. So since many of the industries are now being designated as critical infrastructure, right, where the government is coming up and saying that we treat you as a critical infrastructure and we are willing to extend to you some additional benefits provided you comply to certain standards. So what is your view on the government being a source of cyber threat intelligence and formally extending it to the companies who are willing to comply with NCIPC guidelines?
Yeah, that's a pretty great question. In fact, I wanted to answer that. See, when government comes into the pay, right, it's going to be extremely painful for the businesses. We know that. But then, end of the day, it's going to be painful. I mean, they're going to be a really pain in the, yeah. So, but But the thing is,
I have a different view. Okay.
yeah, but the thing is that end of the day, what are we trying to protect? The data which we're trying to protect can be my daughter's, your wife's. It can be any of us sitting here. So when that is the ultimate target, I don't think it should be a problem. But I think eventually we'll have to figure out ways to work with them in some ways, and have a meaningful relationship. But I know at this stage it's extremely difficult. But I believe down the line, 3-4 years down the line, it's going to be much more meaningful.
Anything here? You only should do.
So I think I have a different view, Kaustubh, because the reason is we're looking at two areas now. One is government providing you. That becomes a sort of a consumption practice, correct? Now the question is, you take it and then also parallelly take it from the government, are two different views, or you may have it combined. What we have seen is, across the globe is that a couple of governments, like for example, South Korea or even Singapore or even US, they are consuming actually at one single point of contact. And then they're deciphering actually internally among various agencies, which basically they are then talking to the respective verticals. So if it is financial related, they may be talking to the financial institutions, like say, NSC type, backend, and then they're providing. While NSC kind of organization may be consuming their own threat intel as well. So it's a dual fold impact, but basically it's good for the industry. That's number one. Number two, actually, so the answer is yes, it is possible, but then there will have to be a law enforcement, or there might be a regulation which needs to be ensuring that it goes as a positive practice rather than sort of enforce upon you for sake of enforcing that, you declare something. That should not be the case. So it should be I would say, a process which can basically enable both the sides together. So this is one view. Second view, as you rightly mentioned about the personal information. Now data privacy becomes a very, very thin line here. So what I'm going to say is that two areas. One is when you're talking about the nation-sponsored, state-sponsored attackers or the criminal attackers. That is one way to keep you informed. Other way to keep you informed is basically, which is pertaining to your data. That means you have gone ahead and look at the digital threat monitoring for your brand, for your data, or for your personas. This should be completely independent, privately held by the organization, nothing to do with the nation or the country. So I think as long as you are able to keep these two independently, the first one getting driven between the industry and the government combined together, the second one remains purely your consumption for your own eyes, for your own ears only. That's the only way I think this can move better.
Any other questions? So good. So I think personally I'm very happy that all of us think in the same way, that actionable intelligence is required, and action is the real measure for the intelligence, and it has to happen both at the provider's end and also at the end of the consumer. While the providers has to use technologies which is very apt, including the ML kind of technologies, to make sure that they don't dump huge intelligence to us, so that we have difficulties in finding what really matters for us. But in our case, in the consumer sense, we have to really prioritize and not leave everything to the automations, and really the analyst has a role to play, look at the intelligence and finally apply it. But the fact that the intelligence has to be actionable. Thank you very much, panelists. It's a real pleasure talking to all of you.
Thank you.